when police opened the van that had sat abandoned for 18 years. The seats were empty, covered in dust. But the rearview mirror didn't reflect a thing, not because the van was empty, but because the mirror no longer worked like a mirror. It was the summer of 2010 when authorities discovered the old, rusted van on a patch of overgrown land near the outskirts of Tallahassee, Florida. No plates, no papers, just a forgotten shell baking in the southern heat. But it wasn't the van itself that caught their attention. It was what was inside a children's Bible, an unlabeled cassette tape, and on the cracked rearview mirror a smeared message scrawled in red lipstick, "Don't let her see both your eyes." The van once belonged to the Holloway family, an African-American household of 5, last seen leaving Sunday service in August of 1992. Their disappearance never made headlines. No national alerts, no widespread search. Maybe because they were black. Maybe because cases like theirs happen too often. But this time, something was different. Something had waited long enough to come back. Leon County, Florida, summer of 1992. A stretch of land caught between the edge of the woods and the edge of the government's concern. No supermarkets, no movie theaters, just rows of one-story homes built from gray brick, yards overrun with weeds, and the constant, droning hum of cicadas. It was here that the Holloway family lived in a small rental house with a worn shingle roof and a sagging wooden porch. It wasn't much, but it always smelled like warm food and echoed with children's laughter. Tyrone Holloway was a tall man with a warm baritone voice and eyes that smiled even when his mouth didn't. Every Monday morning, he drove a freight truck through nearby states Georgia, Alabama, and returned on Fridays with sweet rolls, old cassette tapes, and road stories. But what he brought back most consistently was love. On weekends, he sang at local community gatherings old soul classics. He recorded himself with a cheap mic. His wife, Denise, was quiet, sharp, and devout in the way she loved books. She worked part-time as a librarian at the public library, but most of her time was spent raising their 3 children. Denise had a strange habit. She liked to handwrite passages from ancient scripture, not because she was more religious than others, but because she believed that words were doors. Words can open what the eyes can't see. She once told her daughter, they weren't wealthy, they weren't privileged, but in their neighborhood, they were beloved. Neighbors described them as the kind of family that shows up with a hot casserole when someone passes every Sunday morning. Their old beige van pulled into the Pentecostal church parking lot right on time, right to the 3rd pew from the left, in a place where most black families felt passed over, stereotyped, or overlooked. The Holloways were a small exception, a quiet anchor to the belief that sometimes love and kindness really could hold back a world that had long since turned away. Amira, the eldest, was always the ringleader. She didn't play with dolls, she recorded things. Every time friends came over, she'd hand them a mic and play Alien Interview, using the battered cassette recorder her father gave her. Amira documented everything: the neighbor's barking dog, the sound of thunder at night, even Naomi's sleep-talking. "I record it," she said, "so I can know who's really speaking and who's just a dream." Quincy, 10 years old, was quieter. He dismantled everything: radios, cassette players, alarm clocks, and reassembled them in his own way. Once, Denise caught him connecting 2 small mirrors to AA batteries. When asked why, he said, "I want to see if it can reflect both sides at once." Naomi, the youngest, was different, not because she rarely spoke, but because of what she drew in a soft leather sketchbook her mother gave her. Naomi drew one image over and over, a woman standing in front of a mirror. No face, no hands, just a draped white figure, head slightly tilted, surrounded by shards of shattered mirrors. One day, Denise gently asked, "Naomi, is that someone you know?" without looking up. Naomi replied, "She's the one in the mirror, but only when I close one eye." No one knew what to make of it. No one saw it as ominous. In underserved communities, parents often learn to smile, pat their child's head, and say how strange instead of "we need help." But now, looking back at those pages, those tapes, and even the wires, Quincy ran to the mirrors. People began to wonder, had it already started long before they disappeared? The Holloways arrived at church on August 16th. As usual, It was the last Sunday before the new school year. The harvest service was held outdoors beneath an old oak tree, with wooden benches and gold tablecloths. Pastor Darnell preached about reflection, about seeing yourself through God's eyes. Denise clutched her notebook. Amira carried her recorder. Quincy fiddled with a mirror tucked inside his Bible workbook. Naomi, according to a congregant seated nearby, didn't look at anyone. She stared across the parking lot at a woman in a white dress, standing with her back turned. No one knew who the woman was. No one remembered any visitors that day, but Naomi had drawn her the week before. After the service, the Holloways said their goodbyes. They climbed into their beige Dodge van. Amira, the last aboard, held the cassette. Naomi clutched her sketchbook. They started the engine, pulled away from the church. 11:52 a.m., and then no one ever saw them again. After the service ended, the Holloway family's beige Dodge van pulled out from the church, heading south, a short 11-minute drive back home. They left around noon, while others were still chatting in the churchyard, and yet no one remembered seeing their van return to the neighborhood. They didn't stop at the nearby gas station. No traffic camera recorded their license plate, but that wasn't unusual in 1992, especially in the rural outskirts of Tallahassee. That night, Denise didn't call her sister something she never missed. That was the first red flag. By Monday morning, when Tyrone failed to show up for his job at the freight yard, his supervisors started calling the house. No answer, just the phone ringing into silence. The Holloways were officially reported missing that Monday afternoon. A small-scale search began, with authorities assuming the family might have gone to visit relatives unannounced, common in communities like theirs. But by Tuesday, when no one had heard from them, not friends, not coworkers, not extended family, the search was upgraded. Local police coordinated with volunteers. They canvassed gas stations, parking lots, motels. A few people claimed to have seen a beige van outside a Shell convenience store around 12:15 p.m. that Sunday, but no one remembered the plate number. The store's camera hadn't worked in years. They searched food stamp records, phone logs, ID activity, nothing. No purchases, no calls, no prescriptions filled, no tire tracks, no shattered glass. Police even floated the theory that the family may have left voluntarily, but their clothes, IDs, and belongings were all still in the house, untouched. A young officer at the time, Tom Lafayette, later recalled, "I checked every backroad map around the county. If they'd turned down the wrong trail, we should have found tire marks, a busted mirror, something. But there was nothing. It was like they drove into air." At a community meeting that Friday, a neighbor stood up and asked, if this had been a white family, would we have searched the whole state by now, 3 days into the disappearance? On day 4 of the search, Pastor Darnell suggested police review the recording of the August 16th service standard tapes made by the church each Sunday. The cassette had been sitting in the church storage room, labeled in neat handwriting when they played it back. The beginning and middle of the sermon were normal. Pastor Darnell's voice rang clear. The congregation responded in unison, "Amen." But at minute 43, something shifted. The pastor's voice began to echo and distort, and beneath it, a faint child's whisper crept in. Not one of the Holloway children, a strange, high-pitched tone, almost lullaby-like, "If their eyes meet the mirror, won't hold anymore." The church's audio tech confirmed no one had been near the mic at that moment. The tape had no signs of editing. But each time they rewound the whisper, it changed. Not the words, the pitch, as if the tape was mirroring itself, distorting slightly each time it was heard. Meanwhile, Martha Kincaid, age 76 and a longtime churchgoer, told police she remembered seeing Naomi near the edge of the outdoor service that day. The girl was staring unblinking into a small mirror Quincy was holding. Martha said she didn't blink. Then she touched her mother's shoulder. "But I don't remember seeing Denise turn around when officers asked if she'd seen any unfamiliar guests that day." Martha shook her head. But her daughter, Natalie, later said Martha often had memory gaps on Sundays, especially every August 16th, claiming she'd lose about 3 hours with no recall, year after year. Officer Lafayette noted it but couldn't verify, later, after reviewing the tape again. He wrote this in his private notebook, "I've played the tape 3 times. But this morning, my office clock is still stuck at 43:16. It won't restart, and no one remembers stopping it. As the second week of the investigation unfolded, police expanded questioning beyond the church to residents along the van's presumed route. One woman, Gloria Thomas, who lived 3 blocks from the church, reported something strange. At around 12:05 p.m. that Sunday, she was watering her plants when she heard a noise like a cassette rewinding too fast. When she looked up, she saw a beige van moving slowly down the street. She said, "I didn't see a driver, just 2 empty seats. The inside was blurry, like light through wet glass." She assumed it was the sun in her eyes and dismissed it, but when police returned to take her official statement a week later, Gloria was gone, her house abandoned, all her belongings left behind. No forwarding address, no explanation. Police flagged it as unusual, but without contact. It went cold. By week 2, a group of local teens found an item 5 kilometers into the woods, a compact mirror, the kind that fits inside a purse. The glass was intact, but the back was scorched, like it had come straight from a fire, when investigators examined it. They found the mirror still reflected, but not the person holding it, only the sky behind them, even when flipped. It was sealed and entered into evidence. Next to it, the evidence officer scribbled in red ink, "Mirror or illusion." Days later, that same officer resigned without explanation. No exit interview, no note. By the 3rd week, with the internal deadline approaching, the case was quietly marked, missing no trace. There were no family members nearby to advocate. Neighbors moved on. The community went quiet. Only Pastor Darnell kept the faith, every Sunday. He left a whole row of seats, empty 5 of them, until they return. He said, a month later, at a small, unofficial memorial hosted by the church, a childhood friend of Amira's showed up with an old cassette. She said Amira had given it to her, just in case anything bad ever happened. The pastor didn't know what was on it. But in 2010, the same year, the family van was found. The cassette was finally played. At the very start, barely audible, a young girl's voice whispers on loop, "If mom looks with both eyes, she won't come back." In September 2010, the cassette labeled 816 Amira arrived at a sound lab in Tallahassee. The technician assigned was Wallace Boone, a veteran of federal forensic audio work. He later said that the moment he inserted the tape, something felt off, not the sound, the air itself. At first, the recording played normally Amira's young voice narrating. Today is Sunday, August 16th. In recording the pastor's sermon, you could hear the ceiling fan hum, the flutter of turning pages. But then at minute 17, the audio fractured, radio static bled in, followed by what sounded like a scrambled, distant conversation, a woman's voice. If she sees through both eyes. Then a deeper male voice. No, not enough mirrors yet. Boone rewound the tape for frequency analysis, but every playback shifted subtly. In one version, the woman said, "If the mirror doesn't break, the person won't leave." In another, Amira's own voice whispered, "Mom shouldn't have let me hold it." Boone attempted to digitize the audio. Each time, the system failed automatically, naming the file Missing Reflection, C-J-O-Z-1. He tried 3 different machines, same result. The audio cut out at 17:43, and at exactly 17:43, there was a soft click like a switch, followed by Naomi's faint whisper, "Now no one's coming back." Around the same time, investigators revisited the junkyard where the Holloway van had been found. The owner, Eddie Caldwell, insisted he'd never seen that van before. But Marlon Ellis, a 19-year-old cleaner, recalled seeing the beige Dodge appear overnight after a thunderstorm. When he arrived the next morning, the van's door was still warm. He said, "I opened it to clean." The dome light came on, but there were no bulbs in the fixture, just a glow like a reflection from somewhere else. Then I heard someone cough from the back seat, but no one was there. The next day, Ellis quit. No call, no paycheck collected, no forwarding contact. In October 2010, as local media picked up renewed interest in the Holloway case, an unexpected witness surfaced: Wendell Price, 63, former church maintenance head. He claimed the Holloways didn't come to church that day. His testimony directly contradicted every record and prior statement. He said he was on duty that Sunday, checked every row himself. The AC broke, I had to run 2 extra fans. And I'm certain the third pew on the left was empty. When asked about the sermon recording, he said he'd never heard it. Insisted someone must be mixed up the dates or tapes. Even denied the van's color, their Dodge was silver, not beige. But when police showed him archival photos, the Holloway's van was clearly beige, complete with the long side scratch he himself had once taped up for Tyrone. More contradictions followed. Rochelle Dunn, a Sunday school teacher, remembered Naomi submitting a strange but beautiful drawing that day, a woman surrounded by mirrors but with no reflections. I kept it, she said, but when I checked the next week, it was gone. Not just the drawing, the entire folder vanished. Tearfully, she added, I didn't report it. I thought I was misremembering. But now I wonder if someone made me forget. Then came the most haunting clue. At the end of Amira's tape at 22, Geo8, a raspy, low voice repeats one sentence, don't tell. If there are too many versions, no one believes the right one. Audio analysts suggested it might be feedback, but the frequency signature didn't match anything else on the tape. Detective Tom Lafayette pulled up archived local news footage from August 16, 1992 specifically, a noon weather broadcast that briefly panned across the church grounds. At 11:52, the Holloway's beige van was clearly visible in the lot, but as the camera swung to the right, then back an 8-second pan, the van had vanished. No sound, no people, no tire marks, and right at that moment, the broadcast footage glitched, just like Amira's tape. By late October 2010, with national attention briefly reignited, the Tallahassee PD reassembled a temporary cold case unit led by Special Agent Mariana Jules, known for working cases with nonlinear evidence patterns. Jules began by mapping out every artifact Amira's cassette, the forest mirror, contradictory witness accounts, the TV broadcast, the rearview mirror. She found something staggering. All evidence clustered around a 14-minute window, 11/52/12/06 p.m. Amira's tape cuts out at 17:43, corresponding to 11:52. The church van disappears from the news camera at 11:54. The van's dashboard clock, still with working batteries, is frozen at 12:06. The rearview mirror from the van, still intact, was re-examined when lit from behind. An engraving appeared beneath the reflective layer, 12:06. She's reflected enough times. No one could say who etched it or when. Next, they reanalyzed Naomi's notebook, found under the van's back seat. The final page showed 5 mirrors in a circle, each reflecting a family member. At the center of the circle, an empty space. Naomi had written, if everyone sees themselves, who's the one really watching? Jules built a timeline model, all signs, audio, visual. Testimonial orbited that same impossible 14-minute span. Even Pastor Darnell's service log, which was detailed down to the minute, had a gap from 12:00 to 12:10, labeled simply intermission. And finally, the moment that stopped the room, an audio clip, filtered into low-spectrum frequencies, extracted from Amira's cassette. When slowed and analyzed, it formed a vocal pattern, a whispering chant, left eye, right eye, mirror, repeat. No one could explain what it meant. But that night, Jules wrote in her personal journal, I'm starting to wonder if there are multiple versions of a person, which one is the victim and which one is the observer. In November 2010, Special Agent Mariana Jules received a strange tip from a volunteer archivist at a local TV station while digitizing old footage. He came across a 1986 documentary reel capturing an outdoor sermon at the very same Pentecostal church where the Holloways last attended. In the background, standing still behind the last row of seats, was a woman in a white dress, her head covered, frame slender, unmoving. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. When Mariana compared the figure with a sketch found in Naomi's notebook drawn before the family vanished in 1992, the resemblance was near perfect. This woman wasn't listed in any church roster from the 1980s through the 90s. No one remembered her name, no one remembered her at all, but she appeared again in the 1992 church footage. and once more in 2010, reflected in the rear-view mirror of the Holloway's abandoned van, 3 appearances, nearly 3 decades apart. Same figure, same posture, no signs of aging. No one knew who she was. Agent Jules expanded her investigation, focusing on missing person cases across Florida with similar traits, entire black families, disappearing within 15 minutes after leaving a religious gathering. No signs of struggle or forced entry. The results were chilling. From 1975 to 1999, at least 5 families were reported missing under nearly identical circumstances, in 2 cases with preserved footage. The woman in white appeared always at the edge of the frame. No name, no fingerprints, no ID. Jules followed a 1981 case involving the Lewis family, who disappeared after a Bible study. The mother's diary included this line: "Quincy had a dream. He saw a woman in the mirror. She stood still. Didn't age. He saw her every time. The son's name Quincy, same as the Holloway's boy, but no relation, no connection, different towns." Then came the detail that sent chills down Mariana's spine. Naomi Holloway was born on August 16, 1985, exactly 1 year before the first recorded sighting of the woman in white. In that 1986 sermon video, Naomi would have been 1 year old. As Jules dug deeper, she began noticing a disturbing pattern among all the families. At least one member had previously spoken about a wrong mirror, or had drawn warped mirrors, or shown obsessive, abnormal behavior involving reflections. She revisited Naomi's final sketch, the one with 5 mirrors in a circle, each showing a family member, but in the center was a void, using image analysis software. Jules discovered something unnerving. The light in Naomi's drawing bounced inward, as if the source wasn't outside the mirrors, but inside. She consulted a scholar in mystical philosophy, who offered this chilling hypothesis: mirrors don't just reflect images, they reflect possibilities. If someone looks long enough, from the right angle, with enough fixation, the mirror can keep a version of them, not to reflect, but to replace. At first, Mariana dismissed the theory until she reopened the warehouse security footage, where the Holloway van was being stored. On November 4th of 2010, 7:17 a.m., a figure appeared inside the van, white dress, no face visible, no door opened. She simply stood staring into the rearview mirror for 11 seconds, then gone. No entry marks, no footprints. But the back seat cushion was indented like someone had just been sitting there, and the rearview mirror was shattered from the inside. Mariana filed her report. Something or someone may be harvesting versions of people through mirrors, not to harm them, but to keep a copy. And the most unsettling question followed. If the people we lost have disappeared, but their reflections are still somewhere, still alive, then which ones were real in her final days on the case? Mariana received a plain envelope, no return address, inside a shard of broken mirror, and a single line, scribbled in a child's hand: "You're not supposed to look with both eyes." When Special Agent Mariana Jules began releasing her preliminary report in December 2010, the response from the police department and the media was not what she expected. Major outlets avoided terms like mirror versions or non-synchronous reflections. In fact, several sections of her report were redacted before it was officially archived, the official reason: lack of empirical basis. But for Mariana, what was more terrifying than her superior's reaction was her own. She started losing sleep. Every time she looked in the bathroom mirror for more than a few seconds, her reflection no longer matched perfectly. Sometimes, her mirror self blinked too early. Sometimes it tilted its head, and other times, she couldn't remember how long she'd been standing there. She began recording herself each morning, just like a mirror once did, to see if her voice stayed the same each day. On the 3rd day, she discovered something chilling. Her voice repeated a sentence she had never spoken. "If I'm the real one, then why am I still reflecting?" She started to wonder, had she been replaced too? Was something out there reflecting our identities, not to copy us, but to surpass us? Around that same time, the evidence manager, a woman named Louise Hall, called Mariana in a panic. "The little mirror, it's gone." When they checked the security footage, they saw Louise placing the mirror into the evidence locker and locking it with a fingerprint scan. In the next clip, just 17 minutes later, no one had opened the locker. No movement. "But the mirror was gone," Mariana asked. "Are you sure no one touched it, Louise?" Eyes wide, I saw myself standing there again, but I was in my office, and I didn't have a shadow. At that moment, Mariana did something she'd sworn never to do. She played the original 1992 tape, a mirrorless tape, but this time, through a mirror. She set a small mirror in front of the cassette player, letting the reflection play. After 8 seconds, the device shut off. And in the mirror, she didn't see herself. She saw Naomi, in her nightgown, staring, not blinking. After seeing Naomi in the mirror exactly as she looked in 1992, not a day older, Mariana knew this was no ordinary missing persons case. She rewrote her investigation journal by hand, this time keeping it in a locked box. She wasn't sure computers were safe anymore. The next day, she returned to the old church, now abandoned after a fire in 2003, beneath the foundation. She found a small storage room, once used for donated items, in the rubble. She discovered a broken mirror frame, the glass long gone, but carved into the back of the frame was a strange sequence of characters. VAGR 11, 52, version number 3. She went to find Martha Kincaid, the elderly witness, who once spoke about Naomi staring into the mirror, but when she got there, Mariana was stunned. Martha had died 6 years earlier. According to death records, she passed away from a fall in the bathtub in 2004, so who had Mariana spoken to? She pulled the audio from their interview. The voice was still there, but at the end of the file, there was a faint whisper, echoing from far away. "If someone believes I'm still here, then I still exist." She reviewed the list of witnesses again and discovered something terrifying. The 3 people who had provided the most crucial details in the Holloway case didn't exist in any government database. No birth certificates, no social security records, no medical history. They were never born, but they had appeared. They had spoken. They had laughed and shared their stories. One night, reviewing security footage from her own home, Mariana saw the figure of a child standing at the hallway corner, small build, curly hair, holding a leather notebook. She ran out, but no one was there, on the floor. She found a small handprint in dust, 5 tiny fingers. And next to it, a scrap of paper with shaky handwriting. "I don't want to stay in this version." Mom. Mariana began to understand maybe the victims had never truly vanished. They just no longer existed in the dimension we call real. They were still alive quietly, endlessly repeating inside reflections, lost versions too close to reach. She officially withdrew from the case in early 2011. Her report was stamped insufficient scientific evidence. She didn't protest. She understood the world wasn't ready to accept what couldn't be measured, especially when that thing was looking back at you through the mirror. In the following months, Mariana disappeared from public life. She rented a small cabin in rural Georgia, cut off all tech, no phone, no social media. But each night, she still kept a notebook like Naomi, recording what she remembered as if afraid of vanishing from her own memory. One night in early April, she opened the notebook and found a passage that wasn't in her handwriting. In thick, crooked black ink, wedged between 2 pages, "I am you, but when you turn away, I come forward." She checked the cabin's security camera. No one had entered. But the footage showed Mariana writing and a second version of her stepping out of the bathroom mirror, then vanishing from frame. Only one detail separated the two. The version that emerged wasn't wearing the cross necklace Mariana had worn since childhood. From that moment, she never looked into a mirror again. In 2012, a journalist named Darren Clay tried to find Mariana to write the Holloway story. He arrived at the cabin, but it was empty. No signs of recent living, just a cassette left on the table, beside a piece of broken glass. The tape recorded a woman's voice, one that sounded like Mariana speaking slowly. "If you're hearing this, I've left the original version. I no longer know what's real and what's reflection, and if anyone asks if the Holloway case is over, tell them no, because we never knew who stayed behind." Darren kept the cassette, but never published the story. 3 weeks later, he vanished. His car was found by a lake near Tallahassee. The driver's seat was empty. The radio was still hissing static, and in the rearview mirror, not a message this time, but a reflection. A little girl in a white nightgown, curly hair, holding a notebook, not looking at the camera, but staring straight into the driver's seat. In 2023, the Pentecostal church was rebuilt on the same ground this time as a sleek, modern sanctuary. Glass walls letting in light from every direction. No one mentioned the Holloway case anymore. No one talked about the van, the tape, or Naomi in the list of unresolved missing persons in Leon County. The Holloway family is marked as unsolved, no further leads. Next to it, a note reads, possibly relocated out of state. No signs of foul play, but for those who lived in that time, who walked the same paths they know. The real loss wasn't in the blood or the evidence. It was in the fact that no one believed they existed long enough to be found. An old neighbor, Mr. Jerome, who once lived next door to the Holloways, still sets out a plate of cornbread and a cup of tea on his porch every Sunday morning. Not an offering, he says. Just a reminder, someone lived here. Someone laughed. Someone ran through this yard. When asked, do you believe they'll come back? He stays silent, then pulls from his shirt pocket an old, faded photo, a church picnic in 1991. Tyrone, Denise, Amira, Quincy, Naomi, and one other girl standing at the edge of the frame. Eyes fixed on the lens. No smile, no blink. Do you know who took this photo? Jerome asks. No, sir. Yeah, me neither. Nobody remembers. There are fractures in history we'll never repair, not because they're too deep, but because they exist in places we no longer dare to look. There are mirrors that, when stared into long enough, don't reflect our face, but reflect everything we've tried to forget. The Holloway family has no grave, no statue, no hashtag, no sad song, just one handwritten note at the bottom of a redacted case file. Sometimes the easiest way to erase a community is to stop telling their story. If a family can disappear without a sound, if a community can be overlooked simply because no one remembers to remember, and if inside every mirror is a version of us waiting for our eyes to close, then what keeps us here? A memory, a glance, or someone who still cares enough to say, I remember them. We often think what gets forgotten is weak or insignificant, but sometimes the forgotten is what frightens us most, because it looks too much like us, because it could have been us if we were born in another place, with a different skin, in a community whose voices never carried far enough. So the next time you glimpse something strange in the mirror, don't ask, who is that? Ask yourself, am I still me? Because sometimes what we call real is simply the version lucky enough not to be reflected.